Greetings and welcome to the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. In each episode, host Kirill Tokarev invites video game industry leaders to talk about the world of game development. No topic is off limits as long as it relates to video game development. New episodes are in the works, so remember to follow us or subscribe and share with someone you know will also enjoy the podcast.
Hi, and welcome to 80 Level Roundtable, where we discuss the latest trends in the video game industry and 3D art. And today we have with us Shil Bose, who's going to talk a little bit about his career and how he got into game development. So, Shil, before we start, could you do like a little intro and tell a little bit about yourself? Where are you coming from? Where are you now? And like, what's your story?
Sure. Hey guys, thanks for having me on the podcast. My name is Shil. I'm a 3D artist, 3D environment artist based in Toronto. Currently, I'm working as a biomes artist on Far Cry 6 at Ubisoft. Previously, I worked on another game at Ubisoft, which came out in 2018 called Starlink Battle for Atlas, where I worked as a hard surface artist. And before that, I graduated from Seneca College in 2017. And I was there for like 3 years doing art and animation program.
So, can you tell us a little bit about like how did you get to Seneca, and what is the process like? How do you apply, and what is the tuition, if you can share that, and what do they actually teach there?
Sure. Actually, before I got into the like art, I was actually a computer programmer and back in India. But then I was always interested in like video games and art in general. So I decided to like explore it as a career option. So in Seneca, they had like a good 3 year program where they like go into all the fundamentals of art, such as like life drawing, composition, storyboarding, these things. And then there's like a final year where you can specialize in a certain field. And for me, I chose game art for my specialization. And getting in was it was not that complicated. So they do require a portfolio with several like drawings, perspective drawings, composition, some life drawings, and like the other normal stuff like application letter and oh yeah, and they do have an art test. It was pretty basic, and getting in was not that difficult. Yeah, the tuition, because I came to Canada as an international student, so the tuition was actually kind of expensive for me because for local students it's like so for 3 years it's like around 25,000 Canadian dollars. For me, it was like double that much, so like 50,000.
And why is that?
It's like something that all the colleges have here, where the tuition for international students is higher than that for domestic students.
So my question is like, do you see the value of investing all that money into this kind of education? Do you think it kind of worked out?
I'd say for me, I found it pretty useful because I pursued art as a hobby before, but then I didn't have any formal training in it, and learning all the art fundamentals for a couple of years, that really helped me build up that foundation. And so like when I transitioned to 3D later, I found that useful. But I definitely say that it's totally possible to do like an online course or do self-learning to learn all these things. If you have like the drive and motivation for it, it's definitely possible.
So you had an opportunity to study in Toronto, right? And Toronto is also a place where there's a bunch of game studios as well. So I'm wondering, how does the university work with different kind of employers there? Like, do they come to your classes? Do they do some kind of like seminars? Do they do portfolio reviews? Or are you basically left to your own devices when you kind of graduate?
So in my final year, when I was when I was specializing in game art, we did have both Game Loft and Ubisoft come in and just talk about their projects and how it is working there, and their hiring process, like, and how someone who's still in college can get in. Yeah, and that was it was quite useful because it was like nice to talk with people who are who've been working in the industry for a while, and just because most of them also started out fresh at some point, and it's like it's nice to get their perspective on that. Also, we had like several people teaching their part time who are also like working full time in the industry, so they also had like some a very useful insight to share. Yeah, I'd say it was the college did help to like connect
I
with.
think it's great when you have teachers who are also like working in this industry. It seems like they would give you a lot of advice, not only on the like the work itself, but also on the way the studios work, the way the work is kind of organized, and those kind of things, right? Because it seems to me it's not enough to just know the software, but you also have to know how does it work inside a company. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Because the gaming program there was structured around the workflow. I mean, it's not always up to date because like the workflows and pipelines in the industry are always evolving, right? And sometimes it's a little bit outdated, but overall the course was structured kind of like how a game project how the workflow would actually happen in the industry. Yeah, so it was kind of like specifically designed for that.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your process on getting the first project that you were doing, like the Starlink? So, how did you get there? Like, uh, how many jobs did you apply before that, and how was the whole project kind of like streamlined? Because it's super interesting to learn like what do you need to do and what you don't need to do during those interviews, art tests, and all the other stuff.
Sure. So the way I got into Ubisoft, it was a bit different because while I was still in my final semester, uh, Ubisoft Toronto, they have this art, kind of like an art competition every year, which is called the Ubisoft Next, and they have like several different categories like animation, 3D modeling, etc. And so I took part in that, and basically they give you like an description of like a scene that you have to build in Unreal Engine, and it changes every year, and you have like around 2 3 months to do it. So during my last few months in college, I actually like focused most of my energy on it, and I was actually a finalist in the competition, so that gave me like an interview with Ubisoft and a chance to like talk to the art directors there and get my portfolio reviewed. And that's how I got an internship there, and which after like 6 months of working there, it turned into like a full-time contract. Yeah, so that's
It,
how I got in.
it seems like it's a very kind of challenging process, and there are a lot of steps that you need to take just to get an internship. So, my question is, are there a lot of people who are kind of willing to work there but are kind of being rejected?
Yeah, I'd say for students, that first breakthrough is kind of difficult. Like for me, it went like this with the Ubisoft NXT contest, and for some of my friends, they they got into the industry in different ways. So they went the normal route, which is like applying to a bunch of studios, doing art tests, and interviewing there. Yeah, but like because when you don't have experience, then and like as a student, obviously your portfolio sometimes won't be as as like good as people who've been working in the industry for a while. So yeah, it's definitely that first breakthrough is definitely challenging.
Interesting, because like here on 80 level, where we often publish a lot of student work, and a lot of that work is of very high quality, right? It looks almost as if it was done as in like a AAA studio. Definitely something that could go from a AA studio, right? So it's interesting to see that even though the quality of the work might be high, there's still a lot of competition to get like into the company. But you yourself, like, what would you say were the main benefits of getting this first job? Like, what did you like about it? What did you like about this project? What was kind of like, encouraging and inspiring?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, like what you said, I totally agree with that. Like some of the best works art I've seen recently were made by students. Uh, but it's also like the competition is very high because at that entry level, there's a lot of people wanting to get in. And yeah, people who like produce really good work definitely like have an easier time getting that first breakthrough. But yeah, about the project, so. When I first started out, it was on Starlink, and it was actually like quite a big start, like quite a sudden start for me because usually when for junior artists, they like start out with modeling very simple stuff, but because it was like a smaller project and like a very small team, so like the very first task I was given was like modeling a weapon, which is like a bit more complex than the prop set I was used to modeling in school before. So yeah, I had to like step up quite a bit and like learn a lot of new things. But then also it's like nice to work in a place like Ubisoft because you have all these like talented people around you and you can like learn a lot by just asking them questions and getting their help when you're stuck on something. So that's something I'd say is like compared to like working on a project by myself, where like sometimes I might get stuck on something and I have to find help online. It definitely helps in like working in a studio where you can just reach out to other artists.
So when you're choosing a studio you want to work for, um, what are the things that kind of influence your decision? So do you are you mostly interested in the project that you're working on? Are you interested in the name of the company, or are you interested in like compensation package or stuff like that? Like, what are the main driving factors for students and just for younger professionals who are choosing what place to work for?
Yeah, so I would say the project is definitely a important part of the decision. For me, it's like if I like the art style of that, like the games the company makes, and also like the work culture is quite important. I think, and I mean for students, they don't always have a lot of choice because a lot of studios they need like a certain amount of experience or like a certain level of portfolio before you can get in there. Uh, yeah, overall, I'd say like the project, the work culture, these things are definitely like some of the most important things for me.
How big are like the internal teams in like big studios that are working on games like Starlink? Because we heard like a lot of different stories from different companies. So, like in some companies, they rely a lot on outsourcing. I know that Ubisoft is not like that. They usually want to keep most of the work done in house. So I'm wondering how many people do you actually need to build like a game like in Toronto?
Yeah, so for Starlink, the team was quite smaller than other projects at Ubisoft. So it was around like at least when I started at quite a late, like during a late phase of the project because it had already been ongoing for several years. But then at that time, I would say there were around 50 people, And there was definitely some work that which was outsourced, but yeah, most of it was done in house. But compared to like the project I'm on right now, which is Far Cry, it was like a much smaller team.
Interesting. So, tell us about how did you get this jump from like Starlink to Far Cry? Like, how did this happen, and what helped you kind of make that move?
Yeah, sure. So when Starlink was about to enter beta, so I was like thinking about what I can do next, and I actually so one of the art directors, like associate art directors on Far Cry was Billy, who you had on your podcast. So he was the head of the biomes team, and I was always interested in like learning vegetation and wanting to try it out. So I asked him if he was looking for people, and then yeah, that's how I ended up working as a biomes artist.
So, would you say that like internal hiring in like big corporations is very strong? So a lot of it seems like that a lot of people are migrating from one project to the other inside like big corporations that they don't have intentions to leave, sort of like the company.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of like people moving around between projects, and even from like Ubisoft branches in like other cities or other countries. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of like people moving around. It's a bit easier to like than like compared to like going to a different studio. So like you can still like stay in the same studio and work on different stuff.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think, especially since you have like you're more comfortable there, you kind of already know some people, so it's easier to kind of get acquainted to a new thing. And plus, the studio knows you as well, and they kind of understand like how much you can produce and when and so on. So my question, my next question is, um, when you're a student, you have basically more time on your hands, right, to polish your work, to do some changes, iterations, to play around with the render. And if you don't like even one little thing, then you kind of can redo it, right? But when you're on production, you don't have that luxury, right? And sometimes you're very much pressed for time. So my question is, how do you balance like speed and quality, and how do you make sure that you deliver great stuff, but do not sacrifice like the way it looks and the quality overall?
Yeah, sure. So I would say like for me, it's usually the first phase of the like when I'm new on a project and I'm like still learning the workflow and the tools. That time, that's like the most intense part because there's a lot of like self learning involved. I mean, there's always people around who can help you if you like get stuck on anything. But and then I'd say afterwards it gets easier when once you become more comfortable with the workflow. And yeah, but there's definitely like a lot of self learning. They have like a lot of tools and documentation to help you out, but uh, like learning anything new, right? It can be a bit challenging in the beginning, but yeah, I definitely have to put in like a bit more time and energy when I'm like new on a project.
I guess it's like all about like self learning and self improvement, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess one of the things that can help artists to build stuff faster, especially in vegetation, that kind of stuff, like natural things, is the are basically the new tools that you have, right? So there's Speed Tree, there's a lot of stuff that you can buy from Megascans and use. So my question is, do you guys rely on those kind of libraries in your production, or do you prefer to do everything on your own, or take stuff like from the existing library that you already have and like in the studio?
Yeah. So at Ubisoft, uh, like we don't use like suppose you mentioned speed tree, right? So we use speed tree, the software, for building stuff, but not like the trees they have on their store. So, but we do reuse a lot of stuff. Like sometimes it's from previous projects, sometimes it's from the same project, but like a previous iteration done by some other artist. And like Megascans is obviously it's like a very useful resource. We also have like internal database of scans which were like done specifically for the project, and yeah, those are very useful as well. So yeah, like I'd say it's very important to like leverage those tools whenever possible and not like do everything from scratch. Yeah, it speeds up the process a lot.
I think it's great that you're working for like a bigger uh, corporation where they kind of have a lot of the like the base that you can start with, right? So you don't have to go and build a tree from the ground up, right? You can just use something that was done before, freshen it up, like add new stuff and so on. So I guess that also helps save a lot of time that you have on your hands, right?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time we do end up building it not from scratch, but like from the ground up. But yeah, like whenever some resource is available that can be used without compromising the quality or look in any way, that's definitely a plus. Like at least for my personal work, uh, I only build the stuff I absolutely have to, and like whenever I can like find something on like Megascans or Marketplace, I use that.
Uh, by the way, can I ask, like, how's your? I know a lot of artists, they also like to practice 3D and their craft at home. So do you still have time to work on some of your personal projects, or are you like fully into like the game development right now?
No, I'm definitely try to like work on personal projects too. The challenge is like finishing them, but yeah, I've started like so many over the past few years because I mean it's great working on an actual game production, but like for a personal project, like you have more control over the final look and what the subject matter that you're trying to make, right? So yeah, I'd say like it's like one of my big interests as well.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very cool. And you've been also working a little bit with photogrammetry. So um, there is a lot of, and there has been a lot of thought about that photogrammetry might be the thing that finally kills modeling and 3D modeling in general. So what's your take on this? Do you think this is the tech that's gonna kind of move 3D modelers out of business and everything's gonna be scanned, or do you think there's still kind of like area for like improvement in 3D modeling and the photogrammetry is just like an additional tool?
I would say that it's like a really great tool, and I don't think it's gonna completely replace modeling, but it's like it definitely the workflow is evolving a lot, especially when it comes to organic stuff and things that are naturally occurring and can be scanned. There's still a lot of things which like are not possible to scan, or even if it's possible to scan, it's not worth like going through all the trouble cleaning it up and getting it production ready when it can be modeled much easily. But for stuff like rocks and vegetation, like foliage, yeah, it's like a really useful tool.
So when you're like experimenting and you're doing your own projects, so what are the tools that you usually choose to work with? So do you prefer to work more with like Blender, or do you choose Maya? Do you want to work with Unity or Unreal? Like, what are like the main kind of go-to programs that you like to tinker with?
Yeah, sure. So for the game engine, I use Unreal. I haven't really used Unity. I definitely like to learn it, but like so far I've been using Unreal. Yeah, and it's like Unreal is such a cool engine, and it's always adding new features. So it's like yeah, it's quite enough like trying to like keep up with all the features like adding. And for production, I'd say I use 3ds Max for modeling. and things like speed tree and substance for texturing. And recently I've been playing around with pixel mixer. And besides that, yeah, I try to use like megascans as much as possible to like not directly all the time, but like as a base and then build on top of it, and then Unreal Marketplace assets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Real Marketplace is actually getting some really high quality props recently. There's like some stuff that it's like, like it's almost like super photorealistic, and something that you would expect to find in a game like Last of Us 2 or something. It's like very high quality. But I want to ask a little bit about like the Quixel mixer, and what do you think about the software? Because I don't think that there is a lot of people right now using it, and I'm wondering why. Like, because it seems like such an interesting, kind of easy texturing tool. So what do you think about it? Like, what are the advantages or kind of disadvantages of this tech?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually only started using it recently and for like my last personal project. Uh, Before that, I was like working completely in Substance. So I would say the biggest advantage of using Mixer is like its integration with Megascans. So it has like the Megascan bridge kind of like built directly into it. And with just one click, you can bring stuff into your current project. And then also like the exporting and those workflows are pretty simple as well. But otherwise, I guess the reason a lot of people aren't using it, like it's not so mainstream so far, is because it's still in beta, so it can be a little bit buggy sometimes. Like I found a few instances where like I changed the color in some color of something, and then like I opened the file later and it reverted back. So just a small bugs which are kind of like expected. I'm sure when they do a full release of it, it'll be all like fixed and production ready. Uh, yeah, but that's like the only drawback I found so far. But and also like they're missing a few things. Like I didn't find an easy way to like work with opacity in Mixer, which is like for my project I need a lot of it for takeouts and stuff. And their opacity workflow is like a bit difficult to understand. So for those things, yeah, I still preferred using Substance.
So, and what about like the modeling software? So, have you? I mean, it sounds like a cheesy question, but have you tried Blender? Have you worked at it? What do you think about it? Do you think it has some capacity to become like industry standard to rival Max or Maya?
Yeah, I think I haven't used it myself, but I've been thinking about learning it because I see people like produce really cool stuff with it, and it also seems to have like a really good like rendering tool in it as well. And like I'm sure there's like a lot of studios which use it, and I'm glad that we're like moving in that direction because like 3D softwares, like the Autodesk products can be like really expensive for suppose someone who's like wants to just like do freelance or something. So yeah, Blender is definitely like something I'm interested in learning.
So are recruiters asking about Blender when you're kind of doing interviews, or they're not?
In my experience, like the modeling software, it's kind of like left up to the like artist what software they're comfortable in, because like most studios will have their pipelines built into a specific software. But then, even then, you can just build it in whatever software. Like, suppose you can build it in Blender and like finish modeling there, and then just export it out and bring it into something like Maya, 3ds Max, and then use the studio's tools to like bring it into the game engine. So yeah, it's kind of like open-ended in that way. Like the modeling software, I'm sure like even at big studios, a lot of people might use Blender.
Interesting. So I have a question about like the whole kind of community in Toronto? Like, are there a lot of people who actually want to be game developers? So is there like a large community of people that are like getting together and doing stuff together and so on? Because I know that like in Los Angeles and like in Santa Monica, there are like a lot of hangout groups and well, people there used to be before like the pandemic, right, where people kind of get together and discuss their work, discuss whatever they like about this the whole industry. So are those things happening in Toronto as well?
Yeah, this is like one thing I'm not very like informed about, but there's definitely events and those things that used to happen like before COVID, and because Ubisoft a lot of times would participate in them as well, where like there'd be like things like game jams where few students get together and like create a game in a few days, and like things like that. Yeah.
So what do you think drives people to work in this industry? Because it seems like a little bit of a mystery, right? Because it's not really you're not making that much money. At the same time, it's very stressful, and sometimes there's a lot of work that you need to do, right? But still, people kind of prefer this to a lot of other, you would say, more stable work out there with better pay. So why do you think people are kind of like striving and getting into this and continue to build games?
Sure. So from my perspective, because like I said before, I'm actually from like a computer programming background. I actually worked for a few years in a software company. But then that was, which was like, it wasn't bad, but then I would say like the biggest driving factor for most people is like they like making art, they like producing art, and which is like and game art for me was like a bit more appealing, especially like environment art, because like I wasn't like super interested in doing characters, but then environment art is like something which I, even when playing games, I really appreciated environments, and just like when I first learned Unreal, just like playing around in it and building stuff, yeah, that was like insanely fun for me. So yeah, that's why I'm guessing that's like the biggest motivation factor for me.
So, what are your plans like for the future? So, do you want to continue and build like bigger projects, like with big companies? Do you want to try to build your own game? Because it seems like every at least like a lot of environment artists that I know, they actually want to build their own project, right? And they're just waiting like for the right time, or they're building some prototypes and stuff. So what's your story? Do you want to go into like indie game production, or do you prefer to stay like with bigger companies for now?
Um, I haven't really thought about it that much for game production, because for to like programming and the tech stuff is like a big part of the game besides the art, right? And I'm not really like well versed in that, so I haven't really thought about that so much. But like one thing I'm interested in is because Unreal is slowly kind of like being used for like real time rendering and film and stuff like that, and that's like something I'm interested in exploring.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the best like in your career, and thank you so much for joining. And for those listening, we'll add the links in the description to the video, so you could check out like the article that we did, and the portfolio and the links to your art station. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks for enjoying another episode of the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. Check out upcoming episodes on the 80 Level website at 80.lv. Join our career site at 80.lv/RFP. And share our podcast with friends and on your social networks.